the easy quick part, although it's not easy hour. Hooks County Commission meeting of May 5th to order. Please note for the record that all commissioners are present either via telephone or in person. Have a few items just to mention, housekeeping kinds of things. And that is one that...
Madam Chair, could you turn your mics on?
No.
Please. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. First thing is to please speak loudly. Also, please identify yourself prior to speaking. Please do not use your speaker function on your phone. And please mute your phone unless you're speaking. And then once you're done speaking, please mute your phone again. So any questions on that? Thank you. Okay, the first item on the agenda today is the approval of the minutes.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes. Do we have a second? And who was that?
Tom.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second then to approve the minutes as presented. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Next item is the approval of the order of agenda.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I would like to make an amendment to the agenda and add gaming site authorization for Whispering Oaks Golf Course in Manville.
Okay. We have a motion to add a gaming request to the agenda. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion, questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. So the agenda will be amended. Next item is the approval of the consent agenda. Is there anything there that you would like pulled or have questions on? Hearing
This is
none.
Cindy. I'll approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a second? Do I have a second?
Dave.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Then the consent agenda is approved as presented. Next item is General Palmer, Veterans Memorial Park.
Hey, Diane, am I up?
Yes, sir, you are up.
Okay, great. Madam Chair and all the county commissioners, thanks for the opportunity to come back and give you an update on where the park is at. The Sandsteel won the construction on the park and they started on Monday, along with Molstad moving dirt and getting utilities in. Greg Goppel, when I talked to him last week, he was going to start this week as well. So things are going along as planned. Our wall of the Bliss will be installed in late May as soon as the ground is solid enough to put a large crane on. And when I briefed you last week, or last month, one of the things I forgot to ask was, is there an opportunity for the county commission to help fund part of the park? The city has been very generous in $150,000 donation. The park board has put in $36,000, and I would graciously ask if you guys would consider joining in on the park as well. So, Diane, that's the end of my pitch. I open up for questions.
Okay, and I just want to make a comment that I will recuse myself from any discussion and voting on this topic. So you've heard the request. Is there any questions of General Palmer?
This is Dave. My call got dropped just before General Palmer started to speak, so I just got back on. Is there anything on that?
Yeah, David, this is Al Palmer. I gave an update on the park. Construction has started. The completion date has been split 2 weeks based on some of this pandemic stuff that we're going through. The city donated $150,000 to the park. The park board gave $36,000. And I'm asking if the commission, county commission, would want to participate in supporting the park as well. That's kind of the gist of it.
Thank you.
Okay, and everyone received a copy of the Century Code, Chapter 11-32 on memorials. Any questions on that?
Diane, this is Tom, if I could be heard.
Yes, sir.
I think that we should support the park. Actually, it would have been easier about 6 to 8 weeks ago if this would have come up as far as money, because our future is looking quite a bit bleaker than it did before. So my question would be to Ms. Nelson, if we could find $10,000 to support the park.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I think $10,000 we would be able to find.
Okay. I'd like to do more, but I just don't think it's prudent right at this time. And I'd leave it open to discussion, but I'd be more than happy to make a motion to provide $10,000 to this park.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Sam.
I would second that motion, and hopefully we can do more in the future. General Palmer?
You know, bless you guys. You know, if you gave $1, I'd be happy. So, Tom, thank you for that motion, and I can't tell you how thankful I am that you guys are even considering it.
Well, maybe we should go back to $1, Alex.
Hey, you know, Tom, you know, you've known me a long time, but I'm not going to turn down $1 versus $10,000. So,
Yeah.
God bless you guys.
Thanks.
Okay, we have a motion then to approve $10,000 towards a memorial, towards the Veterans Memorial Park, and it has been seconded. Is there any further discussion on that?
Madam Chair, this is Haley Longford. Can I comment briefly?
Yes.
I just wanted to make the members of the commission aware, obviously the section of the North Dakota Century Code that's relevant to this was attached in the commission packet, but there is some specific case law in relation to that. Obviously the commission certainly can make a contribution to a project such as this. However, I just want the commission to be aware that the funds, if they are available, can be expended by the commission. However, the commission must specifically designate the location or form of the memorial to be erected. So for example, I think on this project, one of the items is a visitor center, along with a number of different monuments. As part of the motion, I believe it needs to designate specifically where the funds would go to, whether it be the visitor center or whatnot, to satisfy the statute and case law related to this.
Thank you, Ms. Wamstead. Does anybody have questions of Ms. Wamstead? General Palmer?
This is Dave. I got a question for General Palmer, what he would recommend on that topic then.
I would, Dave, thank you. I would recommend the visitor center.
Okay.
Thanks.
And Diane, maybe if I could amend my motion to include that it be directed towards the visitor center.
That would be fine. Ms. Peach, do you agree to that?
Yes, I would agree to that.
Okay, so, does everyone agree to the amended motion? Motion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carried then. So we have a motion then to approve $10,000 memorial to Veterans Memorial Park, specifically for the visitor center, the Al Palmer General Al Palmer Visitors Center. That's hard for me to say. So, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, opposed? Motion carried. So,
Thanks, David, for catching that.
yes, thank you, Haley. So,
No problem.
General Palmer, if you just want to touch base with Ms. Nelson, maybe tomorrow or the next
I'll do
couple days and visit with her on that. Okay?
I will do that.
All right, thank you, sir.
Hey, listen, well, guys, thank you for doing this. It's going to be a beautiful park in Grand Forks. It's going to be a destination attraction. So again, thanks so much for your generosity.
Thank you
That's
for
what
all
just
you-
as you move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, the next item then, emergency manager. Kari, are you on the phone?
I am, Diane. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Good afternoon, members of the commission. I'm afraid the agenda was rather brief. I have more than one item. So in relation to flood, I can tell you that we are well into the recovery mode, and damage assessments are ongoing for probably the fall and the spring flood. In more current news, we have some issues to be discussed concerning COVID-19. As you know, the county fair is coming up in June, and we also have the raceway who wants to begin racing on the 22nd of May. I have objections to both of those myself, just based on the current environment and the struggles that we would have to enforce guidelines of social distancing, the exchange of currency in both venues, the food service. The list goes on. I don't believe anybody from the racetrack has reached out to the county to discuss openings. I have read that they have been in discussions with the mayor, which was kind of perplexing to me. So what I'd like to talk about, and Commissioner Knopf sits on the county fair board, so I'm going to let you talk about what they're thinking and what their meetings might entail. And then as far as the racetrack, I would propose that we postpone the track opening until at least 30 June, at which point we'll be able to reassess. With the business openings, we're kind of in that grace period right now of those 14 days. People are clearly, they're equating the fact that those businesses are opening with the fact that the virus is gone, and the virus is not gone. And they're relaxing their practices. I see fewer and fewer masks when I go to the grocery store, and it's concerning to me. And bringing people together in a congregate setting, like the county fair, and the racetrack, and the inability of us to enforce some of the guidance that is out there is concerning. And I really don't want us to become another cluster of cases here in Grand Forks. So, Commissioner Knopf, I'll let you chat a little bit about the fair.
I've had 3 different discussions with the fair board, started in March, where we was first brought up, and my recommendations, one was that they check on their contracts to see if there was an opportunity for us to back out of those contracts in case we couldn't open. And they did check, and there were no provisions there for that, but also suggested that they not enter into any other contracts with any vendors going forward. And so at our last meeting, they were still wishing to move forward with the fair. And we're about 42 days out from that at this point. And, you know, and another concern that I shared with them is the fact that with the carnival people that come in, because they are coming in from out of state, they're coming in from different countries, some of them, that sort of thing, that they would have to, what's the word, Kari, that I want?
Quarantine.
I'm sorry, what?
Quarantine.
Quarantine, yes. That they would have to quarantine for 14 days. And so they apparently talked to the carnival people, and the carnival people said they wouldn't have a problem with that. And I find really that hard to believe, but that's what they were advised. But we do have a Fair Board meeting again tomorrow. I am aware that they have visited with the mayor about opening the fair and that sort of thing. I also heard that they might consider going virtual. But there again, I have concerns because even though you may not have people in the bleachers, that sort of thing, you still have your drivers, your crew, your pit crew, their spouses or significant other. And I think that, you know, you could look at maybe 10 people per crew, you know, and even if they have 5 cars, that's going to be at least 50 people. You have track maintenance crews, flagmen, gate people, announcers, video crew people, concession crews, ambulance crews, all of those, the speedway personnel, I'm sure would be there as well. And, you know, and so my concern is that, and we can't open at this point, I don't believe, well, I'm not sure with the virtual, if you can do that or not. And so my thoughts are is as a commission, do we want to take a position on this and say it's too soon? And so I guess I just wanted to put that out with respect to the racing. And not only do we have the car races, but we also have carts, go-kart racing. And I'm not sure where they are or what they're thinking or when they plan to start, but that's all children. And that's also out on the fairgrounds. And so I just need some direction and guidance from the commission. I know what my position is that it's too early, but if I'm going to meet again or, you know, attend the Fair Board meeting again tomorrow night, I would like to have some feedback from you as to what direction you see us going with this.
Ms. Wamstead, this is Commissioner Rost.
Just a minute. Mr. Ross is speaking. Can you speak louder?
Yeah, Ms. Wamstead, this is Commissioner Ross. Just wondering, does the county commission have the authority to override the Fair Board as far as authorizing the fair being held on those grounds? And same with the racetrack.
Commissioner Ross, members of the commission, this is Haley Wamstead speaking. I do believe the county commission, since the county's land that it pertains to, would have the authority to make those decisions. With that said, at this point in time, the governor's order currently mentions recreational and sports arenas, that they will remain closed until further notice. I'm not certain how long the governor will have that part of the executive order. Additionally, I suspect why there have been discussions with the mayor is that I believe it might be within the emergency powers of the mayor to make decisions with relation to any property in the city limits as well.
Thank you. So do you think that would include, would that include, Ms. Wamstead, virtual kinds of races?
The current executive order from the governor, is that what you're inquiring about?
I guess. I mean, he's saying no large gatherings or anything like that, but if they're not going to have individuals in the bleachers, does that make a difference? Or would we consider all those individuals, like the driver, the pit crew, the concessions, the maintenance crew, all of those that are involved without actually having participation in the bleachers? Would that fall under the governor's criteria?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, the governor's executive order provides that recreational and sports arenas will remain closed until further notice. He does not differentiate in his order as to if there's an audience or not. So I would suspect even having events in recreational and sports arenas would be prohibited at this point in time.
And another.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
this is Dave.
Yes, sir.
Can I break in at some point here?
Yes, you can. You're on.
Okay, all right. Well, I agree that it is too soon to do this. We have just had major testing going on in Grand Forks. Some of the results of that, I think, are still not completely done. There's other testing that needs to be done. Even after the people are tested and show positive, that can spread a number of ways unless we've done tremendous tracing, which is probably not complete. I think it'd be almost irresponsible for us to allow the carnival and even the racing in a virtual sense if they're able to do that. I think we need to wait, postpone them at least, and if that means they get canceled, I'd hate to see it, but I just could not vote for approving those events today. That's just my position.
Thank you, sir.
Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion that we follow the governor's executive order, not allowing those functions to take place until such time as the governor changes his mind or things get better in the community. And so I guess that's my motion right now.
Okay, did everyone hear the motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
this is Tom, could I make a comment?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with you, and particularly and Commissioner Ingen on your thoughts on this. I think our numbers are down the last few days, which is really a good feeling. However, it's misleading as can be because the number of tests are dramatically down. And so I think once we start doing the appropriate number of tests or the tests that public health believes we should be able to conduct on a daily basis, our numbers are probably going to go back up again, at least somewhat. So all of this talk or discussion of large gatherings is really premature and dangerous in the community. And, we not only put ourselves in danger, but I think about the medical community that has to treat people that are the victims of this terrible illness. And those people run tremendous risks. So I don't feel that we should in any way try to increase that risk for the medical community. I don't know, I'm trying to think about Commissioner Roth's motion because I don't know whether or not the governor's broad sweeping declarations, if they should be considered the same for the Fargo and Grand Forks, who have had high numbers of cases. Even if the governor decides that we can or should be able to open up those public events, I don't know that it will be appropriate 2 weeks from now in Grand Forks. So I'll throw that out for thought.
Well, and thank you. That's kind of where I was trying to come from, but I wasn't very clear on that. I mean, even if the governor did open up events, that sort of thing, my concern is that if we as a commission didn't feel it was time or we were ready or it was something that we wanted to do in our community, if there's something that we as a commission could prevent that from happening until a time when we felt that it was comfortable. We ask everyone in our community to be cautious, to follow the social distancing rules, stay home, gather in small groups. And so my thoughts were is that shouldn't we as a county be setting an example and supporting the CDC guidelines, and, just was concerned about the message that we might be sending even if the mayor and or the governor had made that decision. I mean, we can make those decisions down the road, depending upon the situations at that time. But when I'm visiting with the Fair Board and the racing people tomorrow night, I guess I'd like to have a little sense of how the commission feels about this. I mean, even if we did get the governor's approval to open up those sorts of events, if we as a commission might feel differently about that, what's this, can we feel differently about that? And then how do you feel about that? I mean, would you be in support of that or not? I mean, I want them to start. I want them to open up, and I think that that's important. But I also think that, the safety and the well-being of our community is key. And we have a responsibility to take care of that, to follow the guidelines.
I think I heard, this is Tom, I think I heard Dave wanting to comment. I'll let him go ahead first.
No, go ahead. I think where I said, well, I'll just mention, I don't think we should go by the general pronouncements of the governor because he isn't real specific on some things. I think we should postpone these things if it results in a cancellation, because things just don't change, then that's unfortunately the way it is. But I don't think we should just say when the governor opens up the state more, we're ready to roll, because I agree this is a dangerous place. Cass County is worse, but Grand Forks has plenty for our population size, and I think it's too early. We'll have to look at it again, maybe.
And just a note on that, I mean, Grand Fargo's numbers are much higher than ours with positives, but Grand Forks County is in worse shape because of the numbers per capita. So,
Right.
While they have 600 and something and we have 200 and something, we are in worse shape than Fargo. We're the highest in the state, and so that concerns me deeply.
I really think our position should be, or we should consider a motion to deny openings at this point, and I would feel more comfortable in a month from now if we look at it and our numbers are down and it's consistent, then yeah, I think we should give some thought to it. But I don't want to make a blanket decision that yes, we're going to open up on May 30th or we're going to open May 15th or whatever, just without knowing where we're going to be at on the stage.
Commissioner Knopf?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Carly?
This is Carly again. Just some thoughts. The governor's orders, I think they need to remain vague because there's such a disparate population density across North Dakota. And he wants some of these smaller, unimpacted counties to perhaps be able to open their fairs and whatever. But I agree with Commissioner Falk and Commissioner Engen that we need to craft a plan, just like we do to open up the county. We need to have a solid restart plan before we let these larger venues open. This virus we haven't peaked, not even in the state. So my concern is that virus is alive and well and is being shed all about town by people who don't even know they're carrying it. And by bringing those people together in a fair environment, or the racetrack environment, it's dangerous. And the liability is going to rest with the commission because they own the land and they have the ability to make that decision. So I think if we're going to postpone these things, we should do it with an eye toward working with the Raceway to put together that plan and what that will look like for them if/when they open, either with fans or without fans, either with food or without food, however that's going to look. But I think we need to engage them at the county level to find out what their plan is. Because businesses will rely on the governor's word. They will say, well, the governor said, and that's very much how the mayor operates as well. The mayor follows in the footsteps of what the governor does. And I think we need to be a little more specific in what we're going to require of these venues before they open up, and how it's going to be. I hate to use the word enforced, but you know, how do you keep people 6 to 8 feet apart? How do you enforce whether or not they wear a mask? Those are some of the nuances that are going to be very difficult to manage. So I would just encourage take this time to engage with those. And I don't know that we have that time with the fair. I think they need to make a decision. When I talked to Mr. Landa, he said within at least probably the next week, and he was leaning toward closure, but he was waiting to see how the commission felt about closing. And I told him I believed that the commission would be in concurrence with closing off the fair for a year. But I think with the racetrack, we have a little more time. I think we could delay their start mid-June maybe, and work with them during that time to come up with what that plan is going to look like. Just some thoughts.
Thank you, Kari. And also in what we need to consider is, again, we have the go-karts, and so there has to be a conversation with those folks. But we also have a lot of horse events that go on out there with the 4-H'ers and what have you. And so, that would enter into this as well. And so, but I think what I'm hearing is the commission in the discussion anyhow, that it's too soon. And at this point, not having an opening date, maybe sometime in the future. But so is that the correct understanding?
It is, and so when would we evaluate this again? In a month? 2 weeks?
Kari, what would you recommend?
Well, we are almost halfway through May. Businesses have been open for a few days. We have that 14-day incubation period for the virus to spread. So I would say if you readdress this at the first meeting in June, I think that would be good.
Thank you.
And this is Tom, I agree with Kari. I think as far as the raceway, they have to come up prior to that time with some sort of a plan as to how they're going to address it, with masks, et cetera, limit the number of people there. But they need to come forward with a plan. And, I don't want to give them false hope. Just having a plan, if we're still having high numbers, doesn't mean that we're going to be able to go forward. But at least if the plan is there and we're seemingly that we've come over the top on these numbers, then we might have a chance to go forward.
Okay.
Commissioner Knopf?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I agree with Commissioner Falk. I think I also would like it if they would engage us, whether it's emergency management or a member of the commission or another subject matter expert, but I would not recommend public health at this point, to have input into that plan and help them, just based on what we know, help them develop that plan. I think building that partnership would be a very positive thing. And the only reason I'm not recommending public health is that they are stretched beyond belief right now. And they're doing amazing work, but they're getting tired. And I think if we can offload this onto emergency management or admin or someone to help them with this plan, I think that would be the best way forward. Because that way we can keep the commission informed of the developments and what they're thinking, do some education and help them understand the concerns and then work with them to try and overcome them should that day arrives at the peak and cases start going down.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Ms. Peach?
we still have a motion on the table.
Yes, I know that. So, we started discussion before we hit a second. So, did you want to rescind your motion?
I do, I rescind it.
Okay, we have a motion to rescind the motion made. Do we have a second on that?
I'll second that motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, so would anyone like to make a new motion?
Well, I'll try to craft one here. I will make a motion that we not proceed with the fair this year. I think we maybe should make two separate motions
I agree. I agree.
So with the fair, I would make a motion that we not proceed with that this year. And I preface it by saying I had communications with Commissioner Knopf weeks ago about this, and she was concerned that they were proceeding without caution and that, you know, there could be problems on their contracts or whatever, and that's actually coming to fruition now. But it's just not something that can be done at this time. So, thank you.
Okay,
This is Dave, I'll second it.
okay, we have a motion and a second then to not proceed with the fair for this year. And I'm assuming that would encompass then the 4-H, well, that's it, okay. To not proceed with the fair this year. So, do we, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, and so then we still have to address then the speedway and the go-karts. Does anyone care to make a motion there?
Okay, I'll make a motion that we not commence the speedway or the go-karts until there's a plan put forth as to how to address it through emergency management as far as safety issues, et cetera. And that after that plan is presented to us, we will then address whether we feel it is safe based on the numbers we're getting from our tests at Grand Forks. Does that seem reasonable?
That seems reasonable, and I think it's fair and makes good sense. So, is there a second to that?
I
motion?
second.
Okay, we have a second, motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Madam Chair, this is Dave.
Yes, Dave?
You're quick there. You mentioned something about other events, like horse events or others. We're talking about racing and go-karts. Are there other events we should include in this motion that Tom made? Or is that all together? Is that stuff all with the fair?
No, the horse events are tied to 4-H basically. in
Oh, yeah,
the
sure.
Community.
I think if there's any other events that want to take place out there, they should come to the commission for approval before they proceed. That would seem to be the, you know, I don't know if they're going to
I agree.
August or when. We just need to know more about it.
Okay, so we're back then to, we have a motion. And did we get a second on that?
I
with
did.
Huh?
Second it.
And second, so all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Ari, did you have anything else for us?
Just a couple things. Just to Commissioner Ayen's comment, do we need to do any kind of a motion or a press release or something that all activity at the fairgrounds needs to be approved through the county commission until further notice? Otherwise, how will they know?
This is Dave. It's an easy thing to do, and it would make sense. So I'll make the motion that any event at the fairground has to be approved by the county commission until all of these bans are listed.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
This is Cindy, and I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. So I think we have everything covered there. What else, Kari?
Just one final note for the Fordville and the Larimore Dam site. We've been coordinating really close with the water board. They have a meeting tomorrow, I believe, and they're going to be discussing opening those sites only to seasonal RVers. Those are the ones that come up every weekend and or live at the park. We're going to have some pretty serious restrictions. There won't be any weekend camping, a lot of signage, a lot of education. So we're working with the water board to put some of that in place, and we'll see what they vote on tomorrow.
Okay.
That's all.
So, thank you. So my understanding then is that you will attend the water board meeting tomorrow?
Yes, ma'am, I will be there
Thank you very much.
virtually.
Great. All right. Thank you. Any other comments or questions for Kari? Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for all that you're doing. We appreciate it. Okay, so public health, Ms. Swanson, are you still with us?
I am here. Are you able to hear me?
If you could just speak up just a little louder.
Sure, I can do that.
All right, thank you.
I see you have my presentation loaded there, and I did send it to all of you. I apologize if everyone didn't get it in the format that you needed it in exactly. Our data is always changing, and so I'm always doing this the day of the event, so I apologize if it didn't get into a particular packet, but I see it's loaded there, and so you can see I have an update for the COVID-19 as of today's date. If you go to the next slide or the next page, since it's a PDF document, this is the state of North Dakota statewide coronavirus overview. As of today, there were 41 daily positive test results today with a total test count of 1,667. That's down a little bit from what the daily count has been, and if you listen to the governor's news conference yesterday, you will recall that there was a consumable piece or part to a piece of equipment that needed to be replaced, and so they didn't have quite the throughput on the testing this week that they needed to, which did impact overall special event testing, but not the diagnostic testing that is always going on in hospitals and clinics and so forth. The total positive cases to date in North Dakota are 1,266. And the number of people recovered is 559. Total tests completed is 36,421, with 25 deaths statewide. Currently, there are 31 people hospitalized, and at the mayor's news conference today, Altru announced that they had 7 people hospitalized with COVID-19. And then overall, to date, of those total positive cases, 95 have required hospitalization at some point. So the 25 deaths are likely in there, but maybe not all of them, and then people who were hospitalized and discharged and recovered. The map there shows the cases by count in groups of 1 to 4, 5 to 20, 21 to 50, 51 to 100. And of course, as has been mentioned in your discussion in previous agenda items, Grand Forks and Fargo or Cass County, Grand Forks County and Cass County are the 2 counties in North Dakota with the greatest number of cases. All of this information is available at the North Dakota Department of Health website, and you can click on that link or copy it and put it in your browser and get quite a bit of information. But from your discussion, I can tell that you all are watching this and monitoring the situation as you have a lot of decisions to make. If you go to the next slide, This is a little bit of an overview of where exposure is occurring and for whom it's occurring. Community spread accounts for about 50% of the cases, and nearly 50% of cases have occurred in those aged 20 to 40 years of age. And I think that's largely due to the fact that we have a lot of people in that age range in the workforce, and they are conducting essential activities, everything from hospital workers to first responders to delivery personnel, grocery store clerks. There's a whole host of people that fall into that category of age that have some exposure in the community. North Dakota has experienced hospitalizations, however, in all age categories. So while 20 to 40 is 50% of the cases, it is spread across the age span. But unfortunately, the deaths have largely been attributed to those 70 years and older. If you scroll to the next page, here's what I'm sure you're most interested in, which is Grand Forks County cases. I didn't update that total number of total tests yet because I didn't have the information when I put this together, but we did receive one more positive case report today, bringing our total to 270. That's approximately 22% of all North Dakota cases. And if you think about Grand Forks County as being, roughly between 9 and 11% of the state's population, we are overrepresented here. And then in the picture graph on the right side of that slide, the sources of exposure are household contact at 64, confirmed travel at 2, possible travel 2. So you can see those two areas are significantly less as a result of having our 14-day quarantine for people returning to North Dakota or traveling to North Dakota and Grand Forks County. And close contact is 48, community spread being the largest at 128, and then cases still under investigation. Those are newly entered cases where we're still investigating where the exposure may have occurred. Was it workplace? Was it in the community? Was it a household contact? And 13 are reported in long-term care in Grand Forks County. I didn't update the data. It should be as of 5/4 with the exception of the total tests. That number was as of 5/4. Everything else was as of today. And then on the next slide, I wanted to tell you a little bit about some of our activities. And Kari did report that we're really busy, and that might be a bit of an understatement. She's by our side every single day helping us in this response, and she is very aware of how busy our staff have been. Something that's relatively newer in our response is having a local joint information center, which helps to craft messages for the community, for the county as generally social media, who is to be on news conferences, a variety of things like that. And then they have constant communication with the state joint information center. Our current contact tracing efforts, we had a team of 16, but as businesses started to reopen, we needed to shift some of our environmental staff to responding to complaints and concerns and providing guidance to those businesses that have reopened, specifically restaurants and bars and establishments that they license. And many people have a dual role in our incident command structure. So that number actually now, as of today, is reduced to 9. We had 16, it's down to 9 now. We anticipate that we will eventually be able to rotate in more staff that have been trained from other parts of the state and some new healthcare providers that have signed up to be contact tracers through the state health department. And there you can see our data on the number of positive cases and recovered, and the close contacts, and how many of them have been released. But keep in mind that we also had other state and regional partners conducting some tracing of Grand Forks County residents all along. Some of the public health staff in our region have helped with that, as well as some students at UND in the MPH program. One of our more time-intensive efforts has also been coordinating with the Department of Human Services on quarantine and isolation of individuals that are experiencing homelessness. We anticipated this was going to be a much greater need than it actually has been, but we're really happy that we've set it up because we did it right away, and it has been really helpful. I think we've had probably a total of
10 individuals that have needed to utilize this. And our staff has been providing transportation, shelter, food, which is supplied by the Northwest Rescue Mission and the Salvation Army, and case management. And this is something we're trying to transition to the state, but because we were out in front and had a good plan, they seem to have focused more of their efforts on the communities that didn't have this in place. So it's taking a little bit longer for us to hand this portion off. If you go to the next slide, some additional activities, as I mentioned before, our environmental health staff are now working with local businesses that are under our authority for licensing, and this would be primarily in the city. The county bars and restaurants are typically inspected by those from the state health department, but we anticipate that we'll have at least some opportunities to provide guidance to those establishments. And then we're reviewing workplace assessments as time allows. And this is a self-assessment that any business or even county or city government can do to determine when they're ready to reopen. And then addressing a lot of public concerns, including rumor control, which was pretty significant over the weekend. It's settled down a little bit on Monday and Tuesday, but we still get a lot of messages on our Facebook page and calls to our hotlines and emails that come in addressing concerns from the public about behaviors or whether or not the guidance is being followed. And then we're also doing what's called fit testing. I maybe have described this to this group before, but it's a way that we can ensure that the personal protective equipment that is issued to individuals that need it for caring for others or responding to others has that fitted properly to their face so that they are adequately protecting themselves from the virus. They need to wear something called an N95 mask. It has to be fit tested. We've done some nursing homes, and now we're starting to do some dental offices, and have had requests from other organizations as well. And then probably the most visible part is our participation in mass testing events. And our staff have been utilized in a variety of positions, from incident command to logistics to actually testing and screening individuals that have come to those. And if you look at the next slide, since I last spoke to this group, we've held testing events. And the most recent one was on April 23rd, where 714 people were tested. 62 of them had positive tests, and 649 had negative tests. With 3 that were inconclusive. 8.7% is a really high percentage rate, but that was largely due to the invited participants, which were remaining employees at LM Wind Power and their close contacts. And then because we had the capacity to do others, we did some first responders throughout the county. Kari helped us to invite them to the event, and then we ended up opening it to the community at large in the late afternoon for anyone over the age of 12 who had symptoms of COVID-19. So those factors, the first 2 and the last one, contributed to the higher positivity rate in this group. And then that's all I have for information. I just repeated the hotline information, and then one more slide here has the North Dakota Smart Restart resources on the next slide after this one. And the protocols are available there. If you get calls from constituents or businesses or others that need information on where to find protocols, they have a robust set of them for just about every kind of business, from barbershops to hair salons to bowling alleys to, well, I shouldn't say bowling alleys. I don't think they're open yet, but to all kinds of places that are open for business now, tattoo parlors and others. And there is a hotline information there, the Department of Commerce information, and an email address that individuals can get more information. And then lastly are just our resources on the last 2 slides. And I'm happy to entertain any questions that you might have.
Thank you for a very thorough report. We appreciate getting that information from you. Does anyone have questions of Ms. Swanson? Well, you've answered all of our questions. You're so thorough.
This is David.
Yes,
This
sir.
is Dave. I was just waiting to give someone else a chance to go first.
Okay, all right.
I've got a question, Ms. Swanson. As you know, I live in Northwood. We have a medical center with a hospital, clinic, nursing home, assisted living, and all that. What is the situation with our health center? Will there be some testing there, or maybe you've done some? And would we be able to know if there are any positive test results in Northwood or in our zip code or anything like that? And why I ask is, there's a whole lot of people out here who don't think this is a very serious thing. And it's because they just haven't been personally impacted, I think. But I think the risk is certainly a big one. So what can you tell me?
That's an excellent question. I'm so glad you asked, because that was something I wanted to mention that I didn't have an opportunity to put in the slides. Northwood Deaconess Health Center and their long-term care facility was scheduled for a testing event, I believe, tomorrow, and they were set to go, and they feel that they would be able to carry it out, but because of the backlog at the state lab, all of those testing events this week were canceled, or postponed, I should say. They will get back on the schedule as soon as the testing capacity improves. And it's my desire that those be a priority in Grand Forks County, and that would also include the Larimore Good Samaritan Center. We've been in touch with both. They've had their staff fit tested. They know how to get their supplies if they don't have them already. They have a lot of PPE supplies, and they are anxious and ready to conduct the testing. When the results do come back, long-term care facilities do get reported out separately on the State Health Department website. However, it doesn't indicate if it's a staff member or a resident. In Grand Forks, Valley Senior Living has chosen to break that down so that their consumers know whether it's a staff or a resident. I don't know how Good Samaritan and Northwood Deaconess will handle that information, but I believe it will be their desire to be very transparent about it. What I can tell you is that among staff that are tested, they are very often completely asymptomatic. They might be a household contact or a close contact of another case, but quite often they're not, and they're surprised. That's just how tricky this virus is that it can be very unsuspecting in people who seem otherwise healthy. So I'm sure that they will want to be transparent about it, and it may be the first place that you find out in a rural community that there are positive cases.
Thank you.
Thank you, that's helpful. You know, I have one more question, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
And that is, we recently saw guidance that said that people who even went to their lake cabins in Minnesota were strongly encouraged to self-quarantine for 14 days after they came back home. With the restrictions being lifted, where some people are probably going to be coming from Minnesota to the businesses in Grand Forks, where does that stand? If someone actually comes into the state to stay with someone, are they going to, is the quarantine requirement still either strongly recommended or required?
Well, that is a very interesting question, because when the state health officer issued that quarantine for 14 days when you're returning to North Dakota, and it did impact people who were going to lake homes or other homes in other states, it was before other businesses not considered non-essential were open. Now that there's the North Dakota Smart Restart, yet the quarantine order for travel has not yet been lifted. We have a little bit of a disconnect there, I believe, where people may come to North Dakota to shop or to receive other services and return to Minnesota and go back and forth. Previously, there was an exception for essential services. That was like for grocery shopping or essential workers who were coming to Grand Forks to work. So I expect that there will probably be future orders that will rescind some of the state orders, as well as the state health officer's order on quarantine for travel in the next, I don't know, several days or week.
Good. Thank you very much.
Any other questions for Ms. Swanson? Okay, hearing none, thank you, thank you, thank you. We appreciate all that you folks do. Got a great team.
I want to thank you because some of the actions that you take not only protect our county, but help us out in doing our work, and we greatly appreciate that.
Thank you. Okay. Next item on the list is Correctional Center. Brett, are you on the phone?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the commission. I've got two things I would like to bring to you today. The first, I'm going to have to ask Ms. Nelson whether or not you had the opportunity to send the email with the RFP to the commissioners, and whether or not the commissioners, have you had an opportunity to look at the RFP that was sent earlier this morning?
I have.
Yeah, I have to.
I've seen it.
Okay, I will move forward with that then. In preparation for this pandemic crisis that we're dealing with, one of the things that we're trying to do out here is prepare for a worst case scenario. And if we were to get hit with an infection in the facility, not only can it take out and infect a number of inmates, but it has the potential to infect a number of staff, whereby it might jeopardize the ability to safely, securely monitor this facility. So working with Kari, Michelle Thiel, and Tom Ford came up with the idea that we should look at outsourcing for emergent security services should that ever happen. We reached out and found 3 different companies that are interested in putting a response into RFP, which Ms. Wamstead and myself worked together to put together, and that is before you today. And it would be our hope that we could send out this RFP, get responses from the 3 agencies that have shown an interest, and we would have that simply as a backup plan should we get infected to the point that we cannot man the facility with corrections officers currently. I've already reached out to the Department of Corrections and had conversations with them in this regard. Because one of the things that this would potentially put in play is individuals working in here that have not gone through our orientation training. And in order to eliminate the need for that, the individuals that we would get would be security people already. We'd have criminal background checks on them. They would be briefed as to what their duties would be, and they would be teamed up with another officer. So essentially, even if I got cut to half of my staff, I would pretty much go back to full staff, almost by doubling it by having emergent staff alongside everyone to assist in all the different matters that we would need assistance for. So tonight I bring to you that RFP and ask that you approve the ability for us to email that out tomorrow and get responses from the 3 different agencies and have something in place should something happen, and not knowing when it could happen. I think it's one of urgency.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions of Mr. Burkholder? Okay, is there anyone that would like to make a motion?
I would make a motion that request for emergency security staff services be approved for the signature.
Okay, we have a motion for approval with chair's signature. Do we have a second?
I would second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Good plan.
Madam Chairman,
Thank you.
it has Brett Burkholder's signature. There's nothing for the chairs.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, there isn't anything in here for you to sign.
Okay.
Brett.
all right.
Just authorizing him
Signature.
to sign it.
Okay, anything else, Mr. Burkholder? We're
Yeah,
ready.
One more thing,
Yes.
one more thing for you. 1984, President Ronald Reagan issued Proclamation 5187, declaring the week beginning May 6, 1984, as National Correctional Officers Week. This proclamation, in recognition of the contribution of correctional officers to our nation, noted that the position of correctional officer is essential to the day-to-day operations of these institutions, prisons and jails. Without them, it would be impossible to achieve the foremost institutional goals of security and control. When President Reagan issued Proclamation 5187, there were 600,000 inmates in our nation's prisons and jails. By 2016, that number has risen to over 2.3 million. In the proclamation, President Reagan stated that the duties of these officers have become increasingly complex and demanding. They are called upon to fill simultaneously custodial, supervisory, and counseling roles. Professionalism, dedication, and courage exhibited by these officers throughout the performance of these demanding and often conflicting roles deserves our utmost respect. The important work of correctional officers often does not receive the recognition from the public it deserves. Correctional officers report to work on a daily basis, no matter the weather, no matter the crisis, no matter the hazard, dealing with those individuals society wishes to separate from. Correctional officers report to work on days, nights, weekends, holidays, birthdays, anniversaries, when roads and highways are closed due to blizzards and floods, when the rest of the county is shut down, all times in between. Now, amidst the pandemic crisis we are experiencing with COVID-19, correctional officers continue to report to work and have no choice but to often put themselves at risk in order to maintain the security and safety for all. There is no such thing as social distancing. Working from home is not an option. Reducing hours or shutting down the facility is definitely not an option. Society frequently recognizes the efforts of first responders who may spend a few hours a day working directly with those who will become inmates, yet fails to recognize the correctional officer who spends the vast majority of their workday dealing with that which society chooses to separate. It is appropriate that we honor the many contributions and accomplishments of these men and women who are vital components of the field of corrections. And at this time, I ask the Grand Forks County Commission to proclaim and recognize the week beginning May 5th, 2020 as National Correctional Officer Week, recognized in Grand Forks County.
Thank you, Brett. You heard the request from Mr. Burkholder.
This is Cindy. I would move approval of the motion and ask for the chair's signature to declare this week, starting May 5th, as National Correction Officers Week.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion or further questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Wonderful.
Thank you. That's all I had for you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, next item on the list is highway engineer, Mr. West.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
One item for the board today. I do apologize, this was sent to me a month ago, this contract, and it was in the middle of some flooding and got lost in my email, but for last fall's flood declaration and road repairs, I would like to ask for the chairman's signature on the public assistance subgrant agreement with FEMA for the 2019 fall disaster. We did have our state's attorney, Ms. Wamstead, review. She mentioned she was okay with it. And it would be a similar contract that we would have signed for spring of 19, and probably a similar contract we're gonna sign for spring of 20. So, that is my request. And this would allow the funds to filter through the state and to the county and to the townships for road damage.
Do we have a dollar amount yet, or is that still not determined?
For the fall or the spring?
Spring. Is this for the fall?
This is for the fall,
Okay.
because the spring has not been officially declared. So, yeah, we do, but I don't have it in front of me and I can't think of what it is.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So you've heard the request of Mr. West. Do I have a motion?
I would make a motion that we approve the public assistance sub-grant agreement for FEMA
Chair signature.
with the chair's signature.
Okay, we have a motion.
I would second that motion.
Okay, we have a
This is
motion.
Cindy.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried.
Okay. I do have one item I'd like to just bounce off the board.
Yes,
It's not a
sir.
motion, but we have a number of old, small miscellaneous pieces of equipment at the shop that be nice to get rid of. And in the past, we've done, then Sheriff Ross would do an auction. And so I would just like some guidance from the board as to what their thoughts are on getting rid of that, and if they're okay with that, getting rid of some items and how to get rid of them. I did ask Ms. Wamson to look into what the procedures are with that type of stuff. And basically, my understanding is that it boils down to the dollar amount. If it's over $1,000, it has to be a public letting of some sort. If it's less than $1,000, it can be up to a resolution of this board how to transfer the property. Would that be correct, Haley? In a nutshell?
Mr. West, members of the commission, yes, that is correct. I think there would still need to be a motion of the commission if the commission wishes to sell some of this equipment that's under the threshold of $1,000.
Okay. If the board would like, I can put together a list of things we'd like to get rid of and bring it to the next meeting. If you want to see what they are, or welcome you to come out and look at them. And they're items that are old, outdated, and we just haven't used in many years and don't plan on using them in the near future. And the items I'm talking about are.
I think that'd be a great plan, Nick.
So the
Bring it to the next meeting.
request is, or your suggestion is that he make a list and bring that to the commission?
Right, so we know, how much they're in, how many pieces there are, and how many are over $1,000, or what we're dealing with. But I'm all in favor of getting rid of it. We just need to develop the mechanism for it.
Correct. And my question, I guess, is when you're talking about this $1,000 limit, is that for all of it or per piece?
I guess I would interpret it as per piece, but
Ms. Wamstad, is
is
that
that,
your
I don't know if that's-
understanding?
Yes, I read the statute the same as Mr. West.
Thank you. So if you want to bring that forward to a future commission meeting, we'd appreciate it.
sounds good, we'll do.
All right.
Thank you for your
sir.
time.
Stay safe. Okay, the next item is finance and tax.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I just wanted to give you an update how the election is going so far. So the Secretary of State came out saying they would get the applications mailed April 21st, or the week of the 21st. People did not start receiving them in Bradford County until Friday the 24th. And my number is listed as the contact number on the letter that everyone received, and so my phone has been ringing off the hook. On Monday, Dina went to the mail to retrieve our mail, and there were 10 pieces of mail in it. When the mail showed up here at 9:30 on Monday morning, we had 4 trays of mail to process. I don't know how many pieces of mail that is, but it took 4 people 4 hours to open them all. And that's the easy, quick part of processing these absentees. So all day today, my staff, so what I did, woke up at 2 o'clock this morning thinking about all the things that we needed to do and I needed to do quickly. As soon as I found out how many pieces of mail we were going to get, I needed to take action today. And so I got to work at 5 o'clock this morning and I started scanning. I started scanning all those applications. I probably got, in an hour, I probably did 100 maybe. So it takes a long time just to scan them in, and that's not, we're not done at that point with them either. So we got our mail and it was 5 trays today. And I couldn't wait till this evening at 4 o'clock to take action. So I immediately sent out an email to our partners at the city, the park, and the school to ask for help. We can't do it. There is no way for us to do it with the staff that I have. And so I got help from the park immediately. I got 2 people. Commissioner Knopf even helped. And then Kari and Gannon from her staff were here, and I really, really appreciate that. But it's not enough, because although they were here opening and I appreciate it, I need it, and I have to keep having people do that, I also need people to help process. So right before this, I came up today at 3:30. I looked to see how many we had processed today. And we had processed 1,250 at that point, and we were done. So we will be lucky to finish today. Now that being said, I have more mail today than I did yesterday, and we haven't started. I need people. I need to hire people to help scan. I will have 10 laptops. I can set them up here, but it's more than that, because I have to get permission from the state to allow them access to that system. I also had the tax equalization department helping. Yesterday with mail, I immediately called tax equalization and the recorder, and they had 2 people that helped open that mail, and it took 4 hours with my staff as well. So there we are. I don't know, is 10 going to be enough? So what we're doing now is getting that batch ready, a large batch that I can send off to see change to insert our ballots. Pretty great. Guess what? The ballots come back. The ballots come back, and that's another process. So now I need more people to do that. I mean, it is a lot of work, and we can't do it by ourselves. And I don't know if I get 10 more people, how many more people do I need? And when will I know? Will it be in between a commission meeting when I find out, oh my gosh, we are swamped, we can't do it, we won't recover? We've already got ballots out. We've already got people who have made a mistake on their ballot and requesting a second ballot. I'd like to say, you can't get a second until everyone gets their first. But you can't say that. It's a joke. That's a joke. So.
That's an election joke. Sorry.
So there we are. We've got a lot. We got a lot to do. And Commissioner Knopf can tell you about the paper that I've got downstairs that she brought in just from today. That hasn't been, I'm not exactly sure where we'll get to it.
tomorrow sometime.
Commissioner, or Chairman Knopf, can I interrupt for a second?
Absolutely.
I'm wondering if some of the departments would have some people available, and I have no problem with us hiring others if we need to, but have some people that may not be as busy as we would think and could help us out. And I know like, Ms. Wamsted's on the phone right now and she has a large number of staff, but if we could steal 1 or 2 of them for a week or 2 or however long Debbie needs, if that wouldn't help us out. And Haley, I'm thinking back quite some time ago, one of your part-time staff members wanted to work and I didn't want her in the courthouse at that time. Maybe she'd be available or whoever, but I'm just throwing that out there right now.
Question for you on the part-time people. So they are not being paid right now, and so my question would be, would it be more expensive for me to hire those part-time people if I have to pay them what they were making? Or would I be allowed to pay them what I paid my election workers at $13 an hour that I got approved? No question. So your part-timers make more than $13 an hour, right, Haley?
Ms. Nelson, I think the one that Mr. Falk is referring to, yes, does make more than that. I think we have some other part-timers that we could make available for you that aren't at that rate. I need to confer with the HR department, but I think we could have some people that could assist.
Yeah.
And
So
the other side of the coin, is that part-timer maybe would like some additional hours. I'm not sure about, I understand that it would be hard for us to pay more to some than to others. However, if, let's say we got a couple of full-time county employees that are working up there, they're making substantially more than the election workers are also.
right, and I'm hoping that they get paid out of their budget and that wouldn't come out of election budget because that's already budgeted for, that they get paid.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I'm thinking, that if our department heads, they can find us a couple of people and we could use those and, and they're probably very good people and we don't necessarily have to go looking and paying out of pocket. We're gonna have to pay some anyway, that's just the way it is.
So I did contact Carol Christensen before I came up here today, and I asked her to come tomorrow. She knows she's worked with the software that I need, and so I would pay her $13 an hour for the time that she works here. And I probably could get other election workers as well. I am welcome and open to volunteers and people from other departments coming here, but I also do need some people that do have experience with this a little bit, would be helpful.
Question for you, Debbie, this is Dave.
Yeah.
How will you space these people out so they aren't on top of each other? You're gonna have a bunch of people. Can you use different offices for building, or how are you gonna get them there to do the work?
Well, I think if I bring one more person in, it would be fine, but once if I have 10 additional people, I'm going to have to move them up here. So they can have the space that they would need.
So you're talking the
Up where,
conference room next
the 6th
door?
floor maybe?
Yeah, on the 6th floor.
Yeah.
And it may even be in the commission room here because you guys have big desks and we could just set up here possibly.
Commissioner Knopf,
Yes, ma'am.
this is Kari again. I just want to reassure all of you that we are taking the utmost precautions in setting up that room. The tables are spaced. Everybody has to have a minimum of 6 feet between them. Everyone is required to wear masks. We wash the tables down with bleach wipes, and then we also have hand sanitizer available for use as well. I was up there today for a few hours and it worked pretty well. There weren't many of us, but it worked pretty well. And we would ensure that we did a safety briefing every time new staff came in. And in case you hadn't noticed, I'm not above enforcing rules. So if they don't want to comply with the safety measures, they're going to be invited to leave, just because it's pretty important. And we'll know better probably tomorrow what our capacity is up on the 6th floor in the conference room side, and then whether or not we have to open that wall and kind of spread them out into the commission side, we'll have to look at that. But we do have some pretty stringent personal protective equipment and behavior stuff that we implemented today.
Thank you.
So,
So what is your request?
my request is I need help. I can put out an email. I talked to department heads and department managers meetings. I did ask for help. I did have a few people that called, not too many, but maybe they don't know how desperate I am. I need people now. I'd like permission to get the job done. I mean, I might not know exactly what's going to happen and how it's going to look, and we will do it as safely and responsible as we can. I guess that's.
Madam Chair,
Yes, or yes, sir.
I have a motion. I think we all know the answer to this, but I'm going to make a motion that Ms. Nelson be allowed to hire as many part-time people as she deems necessary at a rate of $13 per hour.
Okay.
I will second that motion.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Discussion? Okay, my only comment is that you sent out a notice to department heads about your need for help, and hopefully you'll get some responses back on that. But if we're aware of somebody that, a staff member that, you know, is working remotely but doesn't have full-time work, I mean, can we insist that they come into this? They're getting their full paycheck. To me, that shouldn't even be an option. The expectation is that you would come here and you would help Debbie. Hello. So, your thoughts? I mean, it doesn't make sense to me that we would hire someone when we have staff that are at home, maybe in the office 2 times a week, and the rest of the time they're at home and they can't do anything else from home. And it doesn't make sense to me
I
that.
think,
Yes, sir.
so I think one of Ms. Nelson's concerns is she has to have some experienced people. And so she's looking to hire some prior people that she's a little concerned that if we just get too many volunteers from within the county, that employees, that's not going to get the job done for her. So she's going to have to bring in those experienced people that she knows. So I'm fine with that, and I'm hopeful that others would volunteer so she could get a mix. I would hesitate that we start ordering people. I'd be optimistic that we're going to get volunteers.
Madam Chair, this is Tom Ford.
Yes, sir.
If we have employees that are not in the building, they've been sent home, they're working remotely, or let me back that up. If we have employees that are on administrative leave because the building is closed and they just don't have work to do, yes, to answer your question, and I'll give way or I'll prefer to this deal, but if there's work to do and they're on administrative leave, there is work for them to do. They should be working, to answer your question.
Thank you, sir. That's all I really wanted to know. And I know that Debbie needs some, I mean, I work today and I'll work the rest of this week, but, you know, I mean, those are things that most anybody can do. And, but I recognize that she needs some skilled people, and preferably some people that have been involved with elections in the past and have no problem with her hiring them and paying them. So I just was concerned about staff that's on the payroll that Tom spoke to.
Debbie, would you have a list of prior people that worked elections for you?
Yeah.
I mean, it goes way back. You got Marge Howager, you got Carol Christensen. I mean, there's a whole slug of them.
Yep.
So.
Okay, so we have a motion then from Mr. Falk. Do we have a second? We did have a second from Ms. Peach.
Yep.
Yes, I seconded.
Yes, I'm sorry, I forgot. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. All right, Director of Administration.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, members of the commission, I have just 3 things to brief you on today. The first one being the county restart. So in the last 2 department head meetings, and we've been meeting via Zoom weekly every Wednesday just for the board's awareness, we have discussed what a county restart will look like. And let me preface that by saying no one is advocating that we reopen the doors today or even next week or week after. But we've been just having the discussions of what do we need to have in place, what does the post-pandemic workplace look like, and how do we get everything ready before the county is ready to open its doors again. So we've had very, very preliminary discussions on what that would look like. And the overall goal is for the department managers to bring to the board a comprehensive county plan to reopen. I have been leading those discussions and engaging all the department heads, and you all received a correspondence from me last week summarizing the discussions we as managers have been having, and you received a copy of the questions, thoughts that we are kicking around as managers right now. And so right now we're gathering all that intel, we're gathering our options, we're finding out what concerns are out there, and let's just take the time that we have now to draft an appropriate plan for a post-pandemic workplace and keep our employees and our constituents safe. So we're in the intel gathering phase right now of this county restart conversation. Talking with Ms. Gell and other department managers, we agree that when the time comes, the county should not just open all at once like turning on a fire hose, but it should open in phases, and we need to determine what that will look like. Many department managers have reached out to me because they're very concerned for their employees' health and safety, and as well they should be, and I'm not surprised. Many of them have communicated barriers that could separate employees from constituents, for example. And a really good example is the clerk of court's office. If you've been over there, you get to the county courthouse, you'll see what I'm talking about. So some kind of plexiglass barrier that could separate employees, constituents, and protect from pathogens and germs, etc. But also are there ways to also separate and distance our employees? So that's being discussed. I have reached out to ICON and spoken with them. And I asked them if they'd be willing to take a look at this for us and devise a plan for us, which they are. And I provided them a list of those department heads who have reached out to me saying, I would like to reconfigure my working space for my employees. And I heard from ICON today that they have started the process of reaching out to those managers. So that's good news. Karen Gell has been looking into some other options of what other counties are doing, what other workplaces are doing to protect employees as well. So ongoing recon, if you will. What I would like to do, Madam Chair, and I would like for the board's endorsement today, is much like like we did with the COVID committee of myself, Ms. Beal, Ms. Geld, and Ms. Swanson, we'd like to start a response team. And it would be a smaller team, but yet a little bigger than the prior. And this team would be responsible for taking in all that information, working with one another to craft what this restart process will eventually look like. And I've reached out to those individuals, just letting them know and giving them a heads up in case they didn't want to participate. Excuse me, I said response team. Recovery team is what I meant to say, recovery team. But that would be Ms. Field from Human Resources, Ms. Nelson from Finance and Tax, Ms. Lomstead, Ms. Gals from Emergency Management, Ms. Swanson, or of course, she's incredibly busy, her designated staffing from Public Health. Of course, we'd like to get a representative from one of the large departments with lots of interface, so I've included Mr. Hooper from Human Services, myself from Administration, and then I had a nice conversation with Scott Johnson and Becky Apsey from the court, and then they provided me an update on what they're looking at across the street. So I invited Ms. Apsey to be a part of that team. So looking for the board's endorsement of this recovery team. We will be in charge of communicating with all department heads. We look for and encourage all of their participation, and we would be tasked with, this recovery team would be tasked with putting this plan together, communicating to all these department heads. Oh, I got lost. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. But looking for endorsement there. Keep talking. Okay. So looking for your endorsement, and eventually this small recovery team will bring the restart plan back to the commission for approval and implementation. Any questions from the board? Happy to entertain.
Questions, anyone? I think it's a wonderful idea, so we don't have any questions or discussion. Do we have a motion?
This is Cindy. I would move approval.
Okay, so we have a motion to move forward with setting up a restart recovery plan. So do we have a second?
Second, Tom.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussions or questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ford, for taking the lead on that.
It's my pleasure, but it's a team effort, and we have such great managers that we're gonna have a great plan for the board. The second item I have, again, goes back to email correspondence I sent out to the board last week. At the request of Commissioner Falk, I did reach out to Debbie Swanson just to reach out and find out how things are going with her team. Not just more, of course, for personally, but also financially. And as you can imagine, when they put their 2020 budget together, they weren't planning for a pandemic. So at Mr. Falk's request, we chatted for a little bit. And I did send you her priorities and her concerns, but I think that one of her biggest concerns is the overtime that her two nurses at the correctional facility are now incurring because of the pandemic, and that is going to hit Mr. Burkholder's budget, which is something he did not plan for as well. So Ms. Swanson and I discussed some creative ways on where the county could help with that. Ms. Swanson did submit that overtime, and excuse me, that overtime includes a third nurse who is not assigned to the correctional center, but has been helping and supporting those other two nurses. So that is also overtime that she does not have, and Mr. Burkholder does not have. So she was able to provide me that overtime to date And we did include it in our request for reimbursement from FEMA for the emergency declaration. Ms. Nelson did capture that. However, I did ask Ms. Swanson to continue tracking the overtime and letting me know what we have, just so that the county can find ways to creatively support however we can. I would like to convey to the board that Ms. Swanson was extremely appreciative of all of you, and that no one else had at the time reached out to her for what kind of support we can offer. So I want to pass that on to all of you. I'm not asking for a decision today, Madam Chair, but just so you're all aware, when COVID broke out, the board put kind of a hold on capital improvement spending, except for the Parks and Rec and some other pretty essential projects. I talked with Ms. Nelson, we have 400,000 in capital improvement. Now, much of that's probably going to need to go towards reconfiguring our office spaces for our county restart. But that being said, maybe that's an area where we could carve out a little bit to help Ms. Swanson if she does need it. So I'm just putting that out there in case anyone wants to comment on it or discuss it. But I'm not looking for any kind of approval today. So just wanted to give you that briefing. We did speak, so you did get a recap of our discussion in email, but just again, reemphasize things they didn't plan for financially, such as the overtime. And any questions or comments? Happy to entertain.
Any questions of Mr. Ford? So at this point, then we're fine with funding, and if things change, you'll be back to us?
That is correct, ma'am.
Okay, because what you're saying is the overtime to date, as it relates to COVID-19, has been submitted for FEMA reimbursement.
I believe it has. I
will
will personally look at Ms. Nelson for confirmation, but yes.
Yes, there was. Terry Trainer from the association reached out last night and had to be out by 5 p.m. yesterday. And at 6:30, I think he sent me an email saying they had submitted a claim for $1.1 million for the state.
So is there a window there, a time frame that between this period and this period that you can submit, or is it ongoing until this COVID-19 is over?
I guess I don't have the answer to that.
Do you have an answer to that? Or do you know the answer to that,
No.
Mr. Ford?
No, ma'am, I do not have the answer to that, but I'll look into it.
I was just wondering if we could anticipate that overtime going forward would be paid yet again for a while, but if it isn't, I don't know why we couldn't make a decision to.
I can, ma'am. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that as far as the Association of Counties, that is there is a time limit there, but as far as FEMA reimbursable expenses, that's an open window. So to answer your question, we probably could still continue to look for other alternatives for reimbursement such as FEMA.
All right. Sounds good. You'll let us know then as time moves on.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. What else did you have?
And the last thing I have is a quick update on the non-congregate shelter that Ms. Lomstead had discussed at the last commission meeting. I did reach out via email to every hotel in Grand Forks County and invited them to reply to our request for proposal. We received one proposal from Mr. Smiley Thacker offering up roadway in Nikin and Ramada Inn. So he was the only respondent, and I believe conferring with Ms. Lomstead, we just have to do a couple of things like an environmental survey, things like that would be fine. But it's my hope we never have to use this, but better safe than sorry.
Thank you.
And that's all I have, ma'am.
All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that very much. State's Attorney, do you have anything for us?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I just have one item. It's similar to one of the issues that Mr. Ford discussed, and that's funding for coronavirus-related expenses. There are some things that do not qualify for coverage from FEMA related to coronavirus. One example would be if Mr. Burkholder needs to utilize the RFP request for emergent security services. That doesn't qualify for FEMA reimbursement. And so we've been looking for other sources of funding for some situations such as that. The Department of Justice does have a coronavirus emergency supplemental funding program, which is a grant. So it would pay 100% of the costs of those programs or costs that would qualify, which is different than FEMA funding, which is cost share instead. Grand Forks County would be eligible for $58,000 under this grant program, and it would apply to any costs incurred by the county in preventing, preparing for, and responding to coronavirus. And so Mr. Burkholder and I have discussed this. We've also discussed it with Mr. Ford and a number of others. But first, we wanted to bring it to the commission to see if the commission wishes that we proceed with applying for a grant under this program through the Department of Justice.
What's the time frame on that? Do you know?
It is due at the end of the month, I believe May 29th. So I believe we have sufficient time to gather the necessary information.
Okay. What are the wishes of the board?
Chairman Knopf, I have a question. I apologize, Haley, I was distracted here for a moment, but is this the grant that you and I were talking about earlier in the week?
No, Commissioner Falk, this is a different grant specific to coronavirus. The grant you and I were discussing earlier this week was specific to prosecution and not necessarily related to coronavirus.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. There are two distinct different grants, so thank you.
Yes.
Any questions for Ms. Wamstead? Hearing none.
I think it's a good idea to move forward on it.
Okay, so that's a
I agree.
motion and a second
Yes.
to move forward with the grant process. And so any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Okay. Then we have committee reports. Commissioner Ross?
I have nothing.
Okay. Commissioner Peach?
I have nothing to report.
Okay. Commissioner Falk?
I have nothing.
And Commissioner Engen?
I have nothing either. I think we're all wrapped up in COVID-19, aren't
All
we?
right. Tomorrow, Wednesday, I have my Fair Board meeting, so I will be visiting with them. And on Friday, I have Extension Advisory Board meeting, also that's Zoom, and so that I will be attending that. And then the only thing else I had for you really is from Extension. I received, or I had conversation with Kim Rullifson, who was the Extension Distant Director, and she is now going to be ending her time with NDSU. She has a family member in New York that has special health needs, and so she will be moving back there to address those kinds of things. So Leslie Lubinauer will be our new district director. And so she's going to be serving Barnes, Cass, Cavalier, Grand Forks, Reeves, Nelson, Pembina, Ransom, Richland, Sargent, Steel Trail, and Walsh, just as Kim did. So outside of that, they are fully staffed. And so, and Leslie, I have met her. We sat in on an interview panel together, and she comes with wonderful credentials, so that's good. The library is still closed, and they won't be reopening until either the governor lifts his emergency directives and/or the mayor lifts his public health emergency, and for when the city offices open. So, but other than that, their remodel job is continues, and if you want to take a peek at that, you can go on Facebook and see some of the things that are being done. Outside of that, I don't have anything else. So, next item is unfinished business, and I don't believe that we had any. There was no correspondence this time around, so I would welcome an adjournment.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
I second that motion.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Stay safe, everyone.
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.